Have you ever wondered why in Hinduism we see gods with 10 arms, or even several heads? At first glance it might seem a bit odd for those who don't practice Hinduism, but behind these images is a spiritual message that is deep and has inspired millions of people for centuries. Instead of seeing them as unreal figures, Hindus understand them as symbols. Each arm, each head has a purpose to share spiritual truths that are hard to explain with just words. And that's the key. Hinduism isn't about worshipping a literal statue, but about finding out what it stands for. In this video, we're going to explore together why gods have many arms and heads, what each of these features means, and how they connect to universal ideas of power, wisdom, and being beyond the ordinary. From Durga, who bravely raises her weapons, to Brahma, who looks in all directions, each image holds a lesson that can change how we see the divine. Stay until the end, because what seems strange at first glance actually hides one of the most beautiful secrets of Hindu spirituality. In the Hindu tradition, when we see a god or goddess with many arms, it doesn't mean someone imagined a strange being with impossible forms. Quite the opposite. It's a visual tool to communicate something that goes beyond common human experience. A human being with 2 arms has clear limits. They can only hold 2 objects at a time. They can only do 2 actions at a time. But the gods, being representations of the divine, are not bound by those limits. That's why the artists and wise people of India imagined deities with many arms as a way to show that they have endless abilities, powers that go far beyond what any person could achieve. Each arm also usually holds an object or makes a special gesture called a mudra. These details are not just for show, they tell us specific messages. One arm might bless, another might protect, another might swing a weapon to get rid of ignorance, and another might hold a symbol of wisdom. Many arms isn't messy, it's a harmony. They all work together to remind us that the divine can act on all levels of existence. A powerful example of this symbolism is the goddess Durga, who protects and fights, and is often shown with 8 or 10 arms. In each one she holds a different weapon, a sword, a bow, a spear, a disc, a conch shell. These weapons aren't just tools for fighting, they are symbols of spiritual goodness. The sword that cuts away ignorance, the bow that shoots arrows of determination, the spear that breaks through the mind's obstacles. Durga doesn't need all those arms to fight physically, but to teach us that spiritual victory needs many good qualities at the same time. Durga doesn't need all those arms to fight physically, but to teach us that spiritual victory needs many good qualities at the same time. Another example is Vishnu, the one who keeps the universe going, who usually has 4 arms. Each arm holds a holy object, the conch shell, which stands for the first sound of the universe, the disc, which shows the cosmic energy that destroys evil, the mace, which reminds us of spiritual strength, and the lotus flower, which speaks of purity and rising above. 4 arms to show that Vishnu not only protects the order of the physical world, but also the spiritual, mental, and cosmic order. Even Shiva, in some of his forms, is shown with several arms. When he dances the Nataraja, the lord of the cosmic dance, his many arms show creation, preservation, destruction, hiding, and grace. This means all the universe's processes happen at the same time in the endless dance of the divine. When we look at these images with modern eyes, we might think they're just fantasy, but actually it's a visual language to explain what can't be explained. How do you show an endless being, a mind that can do thousands of things at once in one human shape? The answer was to give them many arms, a reminder that the divine has endless ways to act and to hold up the universe. So, every time you see a Hindu god with many arms, remember it's not a strange being, but a symbol of endless spiritual power, of the divine ability to protect, change, and guide beyond what a simple human body could show. If the many arms of Hindu gods show their ability to act on many levels at once, their many heads show another equally deep idea, the ability to see and understand more than a normal human could ever imagine. A single human face has a limited view and only one way of looking at things, but when a god appears with several heads, it means they have a wider view, a wisdom that includes many parts of the universe. This isn't about fantasy or a strange being, but a symbol of knowledge and universal awareness. A classic example is the god Brahma, the creator, who is often shown with 4 heads. According to tradition, these 4 heads look in the 4 main directions: north, south, east, and west. They symbolize the Creator's presence everywhere, his ability to see everything that happens in the cosmos without limits. But it's not just about physical sight, it's about wisdom. Each head also stands for one of the 4 Vedas, the main holy texts of Hinduism. This means Brahma not only sees in all directions, but also holds all revealed knowledge within himself. Another example is Shiva, who in some of his forms appears with 5 heads. These 5 heads symbolize the 5 cosmic functions: creation, preservation, destruction, concealment, and grace. In this image, Shiva is not just the destroyer, but the whole of existence's processes, and each head reminds us of a key part of the universal cycle. 5 faces to show 5 timeless principles happening all at once. We can also mention Gayatri, the goddess of the sacred mantra, who is often shown with 5 heads. Each of them represents an aspect of cosmic consciousness and the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So the many heads of Gayatri not only show wisdom, but also how all of nature comes together in one divine being. This symbolism might seem a bit hard to grasp, but it has a very human message. We, with just one head, see the world from only one point of view. We are limited by our own experiences, our biases, and our culture. On the other hand, a God with several heads reminds us that divine wisdom goes beyond these limits. It can understand from many angles at the same time. It can see what we miss, and it can take in all of reality. Imagine for a moment what it would be like to have several heads. You could think about different things at the same time, look at things from various points of view, and understand life in a broader way. That's exactly the metaphor. The divine isn't stuck in the limited view of a human being, but is expanded consciousness. Also, the many heads invite us to think about our own inner selves. Even though we only have one physical head, inside us there are many faces: the thinking mind, the feeling mind, intuition, the ego, spiritual awareness. Each multi-headed God reminds us that we are not simple straight-line beings, but complex and multi-sided. In short, the many heads are a visual way to remind us that divine knowledge has no limits. Just as the arms show endless power, the heads show endless wisdom. When we see Brahma with his 4 faces, Shiva with 5, or Gayatri with many forms of consciousness, what we are seeing is a deep lesson. The divine covers everything, sees everything, and understands everything. Up until now, we've seen that the many arms and heads of Hindu gods are symbols of endless power and wisdom. But if we only look at the surface, we might think they're just artistic pictures or pretty metaphors. The truth is, in Hindu spirituality, these symbols point to something much deeper. They tell us about the nature of the divine and our own connection to it. In Hinduism, there's a main idea called Brahman. Brahman isn't a god with a human shape or a specific figure. Instead, it's the highest, endless and eternal consciousness that is in everything. It's the core that holds the universe together, the source from which everything comes and to which everything returns. The gods like Shiva, Vishnu, Durga or Brahma are different forms of that Brahman. They are ways to show divine qualities that people can understand through symbols. Now, how do you show something that is endless and can't be described in a picture? This is where the symbolism of many arms and heads comes in. No human body can show how endless the divine is. That's why, by adding many arms or faces, the wise people of India wanted to show that the divine isn't limited by a physical shape. A god with several arms isn't a strange being, but a reminder that the infinite can't fit into just one human figure. From a spiritual point of view, these images also teach us about ourselves. Gods with many arms remind us that even though we have limits as humans, we also carry a divine spark inside us, an inner power that goes beyond what we usually imagine. In the same way, the many heads don't tell us we should want more faces. Instead, they tell us we can grow our awareness, look at life from more than one angle, and be open to universal wisdom. In worship, when a believer bows before a statue of Vishnu with 4 arms or Durga with 10, they aren't thinking that the figure is literally the god. They are doing it to recognize what it stands for: divine strength, protection, wisdom, and kindness. Worshipping these images is a constant reminder that the divine has endless ways to show itself in the world and to guide us on our spiritual path. Another important point is that Hinduism doesn't see these pictures as fixed, but as living symbols. That's why we find gods with different numbers of arms or heads, depending on the tradition or story. The main thing isn't the exact number, but what it shows, the divine expanding beyond our limits. If we think about it, this symbolic language isn't that far from our own lives. We've all at some point felt like we needed more arms to handle our responsibilities, or more heads to understand problems from different angles. Hindu gods show us that what seems impossible for humans is possible for the divine, and that by getting closer to that higher awareness we can find new strengths, new ways of looking at things, and new ways to grow spiritually within ourselves. So the next time you see a picture of a Hindu god with many arms or heads, remember it's not just a fancy artistic choice or a simple myth. It's a mirror that shows us the endless nature of the sacred and, at the same time, invites us to awaken our own spiritual side, the part of us that also wants to expand beyond the limits of everyday life. We've been on a fascinating journey through the symbolism of Hindu gods, and especially through the question we asked at the beginning, why do they have multiple arms and heads? At first it might have sounded like a curious detail about statues and paintings, but now we know that behind every image there's a deep spiritual teaching. The multiple arms are how Hinduism reminds us that the divine has unlimited power, able to support, protect, create and transform all at once. Vishnu with his 4 arms, Durga with 10, or Kali with many more aren't just striking figures. They are messages that tell us about the many sides of divine energy and the endlessness of cosmic action. On the other hand, the multiple heads stand for wisdom, insight and awareness. Brahma with his 4 faces reminds us that true knowledge looks in all directions. Shiva with his 5 heads teaches us that the universe works in cycles of creation, preservation and transformation. And Gayatri connects us to the 5 elements, reminding us that everything is linked. These are not monstrous gods, but symbols that point to the deepest parts of existence. And the most interesting thing is that these images don't just talk about the divine out there, but also about what we carry inside. Because even though we have only one body and one head, that spark of endlessness also exists within us. Sometimes we feel like we need more arms to do everything we have to do, or more heads to understand life from different angles. And, in a way, that's what spirituality reminds us of, that by connecting with the sacred we discover strengths that seemed impossible and gain a wider awareness of ourselves and the world. If we look closely, each of these symbols invites us to broaden our view. They tell us, don't stay stuck in what's limited. Open your eyes beyond what's obvious. Realize that life has many layers. Hinduism uses art and stories as a poetic language to share truths that go beyond words. And when we look at them, we're also invited to look at our own lives with more depth, more wisdom and more love. So the next time you see a picture of a Hindu god with many arms or heads, don't just see it as a curious detail or an exotic myth. See it as a reminder that divinity is endless and that you, on your own path, can also expand your strength, your vision and your awareness. Each arm is an invitation to act with purpose. Each head, an invitation to see life from a wider point of view. And now I want to leave you with one last thought. Spiritual symbols are not just there to be admired, but to be used. How can you bring this teaching into your daily life? Perhaps by remembering that you can always see problems from more than one angle. Perhaps by remembering that there's more strength within you than you imagine. Or perhaps simply by letting these images inspire you to grow spiritually and connect with the divine in everything around you. If this message has inspired you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who might find it helpful. Together we can keep exploring these wonders of spiritual knowledge and learn that, in truth, every sacred symbol is a mirror that helps us know ourselves better and live with more awareness.